Welcome back. So I'm still with John Lewis, A Life, a book written by David Greenberg, and I will continue. Owning land marked a triumph for Eddie, who is John's father. The plot was in the heart of the Black Belt, the wide curved swath of fertile land stretching from Virginia through Louisiana, named not for its concentration of African Americans, but for the dark soil that made the terrain arable. The Lewises eked out a living growing cotton, corn, and peanuts. They had to go into debt to buy feed or fertilizer, and they always feared losing their land. A rational fear because it was often stolen, aided by the U.S. government. Eddie took on extra work driving a truck while Willie Mae did domestic work outside the house. Remember, they had 10 children. Farming required the whole family's labor. When John was small, his mother would set out a blanket for him and his siblings in the field as she picked. Starting at 5 or 6, the children were expected to help. A bit reminiscent of slavery, but I think the big difference is that they're working for their own sustenance and not for a lazy, enslaving master. Continuing, John despised the toil and decided at a young age that he wasn't meant for the farm. "You've got to catch up," his older brother Edward would say. "You're not pulling your load." John's father could pick 300 pounds of cotton a day, his mother 200 pounds. John criticized his parents for accepting the grueling demands of farming. Quote, "I've got to raise you all," his father replied. Quote, "I've got to do the best I can until I can do better." John pushed back. "Daddy, you're just working and you ain't getting it. I ain't going to do that. One day all of this is going to change." End quote. Luxuries were few. The Lewis's house had no running water, electric wiring, insulation, or telephone. To bathe, they boiled water in a kettle and washed themselves in a zinc tub. Or they would take what John called a bird bath, using a small basin. So as kids, they would say that they're going to have a bird bath in Jamaica, or they're going to give you a bird bath. So it's nice to see the similarity. The outdoor toilets, noisome in the summer and frigid in the winter, were stocked with old newspapers, discarded Sears Roebuck catalogs, or corn cobs. In essence, they didn't have toilet paper. Clothes were never thrown away, always patched up. Willie Mae could take 2 threadbare pairs of pants and fashion one good new pair. In later years, the Lewis's hard work brought about some modest improvements. By 1953, they had saved enough to tear down the ramshackle house and build a bigger one. A few years later, they wired it for electricity. They were able to buy a tractor. After John went to college, they would get a television. So you see them climbing gradually from the sweat of their own brow, and not by enslaving and demeaning other humans. Despite his frugality, Eddie didn't want his children to feel deprived. He carried himself with poise and pride and wore crisp, clean shirts that were freshly ironed and starched. On Fridays and Saturdays, he bought fresh fish for dinner. He usually settled for mullet, the cheap fish, but he liked to splurge on a red snapper when he could. Quote, "My father put a great deal of stress and emphasis on food," John said. It was his philosophy that if we died, we would die with a full stomach. That was his whole thing. I think some of these things, most black people in the diaspora, we share them in the sense that being deprived during enslavement and being forced into poverty through discrimination, that sometimes when you try to have the best of clothing, the best of furniture, the best of food as a way of compensating. It's understandable. Eddie also resolved to keep his family safe, whether from the Ku Klux Klan or violent neighbors. Quote, "I grew up in a home with a shotgun over the door and a rifle in the corner," John said. He remembered Willie Mae, his mom, once remonstrating with Eddie not to charge out of the house with a gun. She also warned her children to avoid the rowdy nightlife of Troy. especially around Love Street. Quote, on a Saturday night, you heard where people were being shot, where people were being cut and killed. John recounted, it bred a hatred of violence. John avoided guns, even toy ones, and abstained from hunting. He never picked up a firearm until he was in his 50s. So I'm going to stop here, and I will be continuing. So you tell me what you think. Thanks so much for listening.